that? Who is that?
I came for you, not content with the stories, so I was obliged to come. Be my victim. Be my victim.
Hello and welcome to another day in paradise, and welcome to another edition of the Unapologetic Negropian. In today's video, African Americans, perhaps the most powerful and most influential African ethnicity on this planet. People cannot argue that some of the greatest black people ever to have existed came from the African American community. This has given African Americans a label. Everybody looked up to African Americans. They all wanted to be African and African American. Even other diasporans wanted to be African American. But this gives us a situation where we get a lot of people who don't realize just how diverse the African diaspora truly is. The African diaspora is vast. We have hundreds of ethnicities around the world, but not many people know about them. Ethnicity outside of Africa, that goes to the Afro-Brazilians. This is what makes us special as people. We are the most diverse people on the planet. And all our communities across the diaspora are different. They are varied. We have different ways of speaking and we hold different values. This makes us extremely special. However, there are some things within our communities, some things which are the same. Every community across the diaspora has one thing in common, which is monotonous across the entire diaspora. One thing. And that one thing is every single Afro-diasporan community has one boogeyman. A boogeyman. One man. That guy. That one person that everybody knows. The most prolific predator that everybody knows. We in the Black British community hold the mother of all boogeymen. We have the most well-known boogeyman on the planet. Even you guys over there, you African Americans, will know who this guy is straight away. And if you don't know who he is, you will know the character who was inspired by this particular person. And this particular person, well, I met this particular person way, way, way back. In fact, you could even say that I was a victim. This person is so prolific. He had an almost 100% success rate. So what did he do with his victims? Well, we're gonna go into what he did with his victims because it's perhaps not what you think it's going to be. Throughout the white English community, they all called him the boogeyman because he was the perfect character to be called a boogeyman. This guy fitted that genre perfectly to them, and he stalked the streets. You would never ever see this man coming. You wouldn't hear him, you wouldn't know when he was around. I've only seen him once, I've only met him once, but Jesus, everything that I'm reading here on the internet about him was correct. I am talking about no other than Akinwale Arobiki, known in our community as Purple Aki. This guy is 6'6", over 300 pounds, but you will never hear this man. He is like a ghost. And I'm gonna try and be careful now, actually, because Akinwale was brought up in a time in which all those racial undertones were used by the courts to convict him for crimes, which he probably committed. But there was no need for them to use the words like, he's the Night Stalker and he is a predator from the jungle, just these, you know where they're going to with this, don't you? The silverback gorilla, chasing and stalking his victim, even though silverback gorillas are vegan, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, they used these types of words, really, and it was just crazy. I mean, this is Northern England in the 1980s, so we know what those people are. Actually, they're kind of like that now anyway. So who is Purple Aki? Where did he come from? How did he get this name? How do you guys in the United States know him? You will know him. I'm going to explain to you how you actually know this person. What should you do if you are confronted by a predator? How do you teach your children how to deal with somebody who is as conniving and as prolific as a predator as Purple Aki? Well, today I'm going to tell you about my own personal experience meeting Purple Aki way back in the late 1980s. I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to give you some information on how you can try and avoid people like him, because there are certain things that not even the boogeyman likes. We're going to talk about that today. But first, I'm going to ask you to please like, subscribe, share, click the bell notification, and please consider supporting our channel on our Patreon, link in the description. Akinwale Arabiki himself used to say that the word Purple Aki, the term, the name that was given to him, was a racist name. But it wasn't to us, especially us from the Caribbean community. Akinwale Arabiki was of Nigerian descent, so he may not have known this, but the name Purple Aki was perfect for him. Why? Because we know that Aki, which is a food, a delicacy over in Jamaica, well, it's not purple, it's yellow. It's as strange as Akinwale Arabiki himself. It stuck with us, it stuck with me, and it stuck with the Afro-Caribbean community in the UK. So I'm gonna tell you how good this guy is. Everybody knows him as being a pervert. We all know him as being a pervert because of his actions. This man has never been convicted of any sexual offences, ever. However, over 700 people have attested being a victim of his. I'm kind of one of those people, unfortunately. Where do we start? I'm going to start first of all by telling you about my experience. It must have been 1988 because I'd just come back from Jamaica. I grew up in a private house near a council estate. Council estate in England is like the projects over in the United States, okay? So it's low income housing. And unfortunately, most of my friends came from there. I went to see my friends and we was hanging out on the street. I think I was around 13 years old and we were just chilling, playing football, doing that sort of thing. It was a beautiful day, And we were just enjoying the sunshine. And there is like a wall where we used to sit, and there is a stairway, and up the stairway there's an alleyway, okay? And I can't remember at the top of my mind what we were doing at that time, but I remember this man just appearing out of nowhere, okay? And it was a big guy. He's a big guy, okay? Even at that time. And it was, of course, Akinwale Arabiki. It was Purple Aki himself. I didn't know who this man was. Nobody knew who this man was. He didn't really have that much of a bigger name throughout the United Kingdom. He did have a massive name up near Birkenhead and Liverpool, where he was raised and where he was living. Everyone knew him up there. Everyone, but we didn't. He's there and he's just hanging around. I don't know what he's doing. He starts talking to us. And we're like, you know, okay. I can't even remember how he started the conversation. But then he starts, I bet you can't run down there, can you? You know, you can't beat me in a race. We're 30, of course we can beat you in a race. Yeah, of course we can beat you. So we have a race against him and we beat him, no problem. Okay, and then, oh wow, you guys are really fast. That's what he's telling us. And we're like, yeah, of course we are, yeah. But you're not that strong, are you? You're not that strong. Like, you can't do like push-ups. I said, of course we could do push-ups, we could do push-ups, we could sit-ups, we could do everything. Yeah, go on then, do me 10 push-ups then. I was like, okay, then fine. We did 10 push-ups, like that. Right, he's like, yeah, okay, man, yeah, you can do it. I'm like, yeah, of course we can. You know, we're strong, we can do this, you know. No problem. So, and then he's like, wait a minute, you know, you show us your muscles. Show what, you know, it's like, yeah, look at that. He's like, can I just start feeling my muscles? Wow. Like, what the f? I was like, I can't even remember what my reaction was at that time, but I know I would have been completely confused at that time. And the good thing is that I wasn't there by myself, so there was many people around us, and I wasn't the only person he did this to. He used to squeeze down muscles to check, to see, oh wow, you're big and strong, you are. And of course, as a 13-year-old, you're developing into a man. So that's a compliment. You're gonna be like, yeah, man, yeah, I'm a bit manly now, you know, I'm growing muscles, I'm you know. So anyway, it didn't go any further than that, you know, and as ghostly as he just came in like a phantom, he disappeared like a phantom too. Just, you know, he's there and he's gone. And that's my experience with Purple Aki. And I didn't know who this man was. I didn't even know he had a name at all until, it wasn't until lately that I knew that this man existed, than that I had met this man. I knew that I'd met him because this man has a really distinct look. You would know who he is straight away. He's not like somebody that blends into the crowd, but even though that's exactly what he does. Okay, so that is my experience with this man. Purple Aki was known as the man that grabbed muscles, and he gets excited by grabbing muscles. It turns him on. It's his thing. And this is so weird because you would never think that simply grabbing someone's muscles like that would stimulate somebody in that sort of a way, that somebody would go around purposely trying to cop a feel of somebody's muscles in order to be sexually gratified. It's mind-blowing. But this was Purple Aki's forte. This is what he was known for around the Birkenhead area at that time, and then later on throughout the entire UK. By the early 90s, everybody knew who Purple Aki was. Everybody knew who he was, and everybody knew what he was doing. You see, I'm going to tell you another story right now about Purple Aki, a fact that you probably have never known. Everybody knew who Purple Aki was, but he became known nationwide after this one incident way back in the 1980s up in Liverpool. One gentleman by the name of Gary Kelly, a 15-year-old student from Liverpool, was stalked by Purple Aki. Purple Aki would follow him everywhere. He would even follow him into his girlfriend's house without Gary Kelly knowing. And then, as Gary Kelly would walk out, boom, he'd jump out of the bushes. Literally, can you imagine that? Purple Aki, a guy darker skinned than I am, and bigger than I am, jumping out of the bushes, asking you to do some of the strangest things. So he used to get this Gary Kelly to do push-ups and sit-ups for him. And then he used to grab his muscles and say, okay. And there was no harm in what he was doing. It was so weird that this guy was asking for such things to be done, you know, in the middle of the night. So this Gary Kelly was petrified of Purple Aki. He was absolutely horrified. Every single time he would see him in places and he would try to get away. But then Purple Aki never used to chase down anyone. He never used to run after anyone. It was like, he was like a phantom, like an entity. He could just materialize in a place and you wouldn't know how he got there. There was no stories. If you read all the stories about him, there was no stories of him chasing after anyone. He didn't have to. He was harassing Gary Kelly so much that this Gary Kelly went to the police. He went to the police and he got an order for him to stay away from him, a certain distance away from him. But because Gary Kelly had gone to the police, it didn't set his fears at ease. It made him even more petrified and paranoid that this Purple Aki was now angry and was out to get him. So at one point, Gary Kelly went to the swimming pool. He went to the swim baths, was swimming, came out the swimming baths, got ready. He was leaving the swimming baths, and who was waiting at the front door of the swimming baths? Purple Aki. He was waiting right there for him. Somehow, Gary Kelly managed to escape through an emergency exit. He ran out the door and started running towards the train station. And he looked behind him. Purple Aki was nowhere to be seen. He was very happy about this. He got to the train station, and who was on the platform on the other side of the train station? Purple Aki. This guy, I'm telling you now, man. They don't make him anywhere else like they do in England, I'll tell you that. Gary Kelly, petrified for his life, jumped onto the tracks and started running away from Purple Aki, running down the tracks. He carried on running down the tracks and was electrocuted by the overhead wires. He died instantly. Now, Akinwale was not running after him, so it wasn't like they could accuse him for murder or something like that. But they did prosecute him for manslaughter. And during this trial, they used every single derogatory racial, I don't know, that was possible at the time. So it was, you know, the Dark Destroyer, the Night Stalker, those types of words, the Predator, the Dark Jungle Predator, They used this, and eventually he got convicted. Purple Aki managed to gather his solicitors together. This was way back in 1986, okay, guys? This is the worst part of the worst place at the worst time for a 6'5" dark-skinned black man to be, and in the worst situation as well, convicted of killing a white person in the United Kingdom, convicted of manslaughter in Northern England. Akinwale was convicted of manslaughter. But like I said before, Akinwale was never chasing anyone. He never had to chase somebody. Akinwale was a ghost. He was an apparition. He really was a person who was so stealthy, even though he was huge. He could move around town. No one would know who he was. So it all came to a head. Akinwale pleaded his innocence. He said, wait a minute, this has got nothing to do with me. Okay? And he brought it back to court. And he brought his solicitors back to court. He spoke about the racial injustice that had been served against him. And eventually, he got his conviction overturned. He even fined the police and was awarded £35,000 by the Crown Court. This accident solidified his name in history as being somebody that was untouchable. Really, this man had never been convicted of any sexual offences, but we all were scared of him. We all knew what he was up to. So how do you guys know him? Even you guys over there in America? Well, let's explain this. And you're probably not going to believe this, but you're going to have to. So this all happened in Birkenhead in 1986. Back in 1986, there was an up-and-coming writer who also lived very close to Purple Aki at the time in Birkenhead. And this particular writer was named Clive Barker. Clive Barker was an up-and-coming writer, novelist at that time, a prominent writer up there in Liverpool. But you guys might know Clive Barker, actually, if you've ever watched Hellraiser.
The box. You opened it. We came.
Okay, so that's him. We're talking about the Hellraiser guy here, right? Clive Barker is the person who wrote Hellraiser. And he wrote a number of other films as well. He was astonished. He was so mesmerized about how this purple Aki was able to do the things he was able to do. He literally managed to kill somebody just by them fearing him. So that is power. That is unbelievable power to have over someone when you can kill someone with only fear. So he began writing about a character just like Purple Aki. He wrote a book based on Purple Aki and on Purple Aki's ability, somewhat his magical ability to maneuver around, to get from place to place without anybody seeing him, even though he was big and black and powerful. He built a character based on this gentleman who could kill somebody through fear alone. He built this character and named him the Candyman.
Believe in me. Be my victim. Your death will be a tale to frighten children. To make.
Yes, Purple Aki is the man who the Candyman, the character the Candyman, was based on. And I met him. Oh my God. That, for me, is unbelievable. Okay? It makes perfect sense. Okay? Purple Aki was, of course, I mean, he never came out as being gay, but let's just say he wasn't interested in women at all. He wasn't even interested in children. So no one really went after him for those reasons. He was interested in young men and in muscles. So you could make the assumption that this guy was probably gay. Okay? So you have this writer, like in Clive Barker, who was married to a man at the time, right? You have him, and he was absolutely obsessed by this Purple Aki by Purple Aki, and he wanted to memorialize him. He wanted to solidify Purple Aki's place in history, and so this is how he did it. He built the character, the Candyman, based purely on Purple Aki. There you go. It's a nice little story for me to tell you that. Purple Aki, the Candyman, was a real person. He's a real person that I had met in real life. And Purple Aki today would not be seen as somebody, I would say, that would be taken seriously, even though the courts would probably take him more seriously today. He was never caught going down into the nether regions of anybody else. He was never caught doing anything like that. He never violently hurt anybody, you know. He was never caught for doing any of these things. And this is part of the reason people were so afraid of him. They feared him to the point in which he even killed somebody through fear alone. And it's a crazy story, and it's actually crazy for me to be a part of this story. You got to remember, at this time, around the late 1980s, at that time, you know, Purple Aki was banned from traveling around certain parts of Birkenhead and the Wirral, you know, the greater Liverpool area. He was banned from traveling around that area. So he went nationally. He used to jump on trains in order to fulfill his little fantasy. So he used to travel to Birmingham, he used to travel to London, he used to travel to Manchester and all these places to do the exact same thing. So it's just crazy that I was there, right there in the middle of the summertime, and it happened to me. Damned. I would say that I'm kind of lucky. You know, there are lots of children much younger than me who go through so much worse than I went through, okay? By predators who do things which, for all intents and purposes, changes their lives forever. Purple Aki was a visible bogeyman, okay? He was 6'6", he was 300 pounds, okay? So you're not going to miss a person like Purple Aki. And a lot of the people that demonized him were people that right now go on the internet and view very disturbing things on the internet and who pay for that sort of thing. You know, I'm not going to defend Purple Aki for his actions. You know, I'm not going to say that he's part, you know, somebody who we're proud of producing in the Black British community, but he existed, and he still, even to today, 2021, there was a documentary just made about him. So we know that this man has the ability to still put the fear in people. I'm not even sure if that's a bad thing for a black man, especially in the UK. I think it's a good thing for us to have that fear, for people to fear us. They should fear us. They should fear us. Think about that for a moment. Why shouldn't they? When I was growing up in the 80s, it was that fear which helped me out a lot. In many cases, I was never approached. Nobody would try to fight me simply because they said, well, this kid's 6 foot tall and he's big, you know, she'll sort you out, you know what I mean? I truly do believe that fear, I think that we should cultivate it. What do you think about that story? Have any of you guys ever had any experiences with Purple Aki? Did you know that the character, the Candyman, was based on Purple Aki? Let me know in the comments section. It'd be really good to hear your thoughts on this. So guys, that's all I've got time for today. I'd like to thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my patrons, and I will see you in the next one. Until the next time, please think twice. Torah bet.